Okay, guys, we are going deep into the course behavior modification, and we are today going to talk about interesting topic that you must know. You must know, no matter where you're listening from or viewing me from or anything. Like, this is a topic you must know for your works, for your exams, and every other place you're at. Right? It's very interesting, and that is what we call exposure therapies. Let me do an overview in case if I didn't start it in this video. Let me start with trying to create an understanding to exposure therapies. We have to understand that we have types of exposure therapies, right? There are exposure therapies. Now, when I say exposure therapies, the major assumptions of these exposure therapies is very interesting in treating phobias. Let me point this out, right? Exposure therapies has been seen to be very effective in treating phobias, both specific phobias, arachnophobia, even agoraphobia. We use it for social anxiety also. We use it for claustrophobia. We use it for acrophobia, aerophobia, motophobia. Okay, yeah. There is persons, children that could not enter car. They are afraid of that, and there are people that are afraid of that, and they have good reasons, right? In their own world, perceived good reasons. So PTSD exposure therapies are good in it too. They are very effective. We're going to be talking about the types of exposure therapies, but before then, I'm trying to do an overview to it, so you discover there are the type that are intense exposure, like like I've said, phobias. There are things the person is having a fear for, anxiety for, and they don't want to even go close. Once you mention that thing, they're having problem, and now this technique is trying to expose them to those things. Right now, what is the major assumption? The assumption is that anxiety and relaxation cannot stay together. Anxiety and relaxation cannot be in the same boat. That one must take the place of the other. It's either this is in or the other one is in. It's either anxiety is out or relaxation is out. So they want to replace or substitute anxiety for relaxation, and that is why they will want to expose the clients to that feared stimulus, and with the aim of teaching you the skills of how to combat it, like and to relax, how to relax and replace your anxiety with relaxations. So now the exposure techniques, there are the ones that are intense, like immediately. That is, for example, you have flooding, right? Flooding and implosive therapy by Thomas Stanf. We'll talk about that. So that is one. Then we have the ones that are gradual, like they don't just because you're afraid of snake, they bring the snake on the table. No, that is intense. If you're afraid of snake, they want to start gradually. You will enjoy this course if you flow with me, if you are motivated to study, right? So that is for that. We call example of that is systematic desensitization, which is the next topic we'll talk about soon. The systematic desensitization comes step by step. We'll discuss that very soon. So that is having intense. We have the ones that go by gradual processes. These are the types of exposure therapies that we'll be discussing. And sometimes you understand that one may not be that effective in the other. And again, very important principle we understand in behavior modification and these exposure therapies is that there are some techniques that we call it in vivo and some are imaginary. I've talked about intense and gradual. Now I'm talking about in vivo or imaginary. Now imagine a person that is having PTSD, a veteran of war that came back with one leg and everything, and the whole war event is still happening in his head and he's having PTSD. You know, in this situation, you and I may not be able to create a war scene, right? Sometimes imaginary may be necessary. Sometimes if you have somebody that have a problem with let's say snake, right, you may not be able to expose the person directly to snake. You see that we may be using imaginary technique, and you see this imaginary social learning, that is social cognition, is very key to it. The other one, there are situations that there is no need for being imaginary, like somebody that's afraid of riding in a car or going on a lift. These lifts into 120th floor in a building, long buildings like acrophobia, or using lifts. You know, there is no need telling the person, now I want you to imagine you are in the door. I want you to now imagine you are entering. I want you to now, we will see this in action, right? I'm trying to do an overview to that. So you see that in vivo will be more effective. In as much as imaginary will be useful, but in vivo in this situation will be the way forward. Like if you have somebody that have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, that cannot touch a dead dog or anything dead or dirty things, how do you treat such person? Please don't tell the person, imagine the dog is dead and the thing is flying, and just in vivo, right? We'll discuss those things. A little girl was afraid of entering car, like being rode in a car. What happened? The therapist could decide to use intense like flooding. Will be like you put a child in a car and the child will be crying, and you ride the child in that car till the child stop crying. Now, are you dead? Imagine that situation, right? So the child will say, okay, it's not harmful after all, right? This is not what you do with an adult, it's unethical. You will be sued, and perhaps your license will be in question. We'll discuss how you go about that. And please remember the ethical principles in psychology. Informed consent is very key to therapeutic scenes or settings. You must write it down. What am I going to expect from you as a client? What are you expecting from me as a therapist? These are called therapeutic alliance. You build rapport, and he or she will understand your therapeutic techniques and the orientation or the technique you're going to use before you go into it. And from there, you tell her, we are using in vivo, we are using imaginary, we are going to be gradual, we are going to be intense. If not, you will be sued, right? He or she didn't tell me he's going to show me a snake. I told him these, all of those things, right? So it's very important. So this is the principles of exposure therapy: intense, gradual, imaginary, in vivo, with time. And again, there are situations that both in imaginary and in vivo may not be tenable, right? For example, I talked about the war, right? The war scenes. Even if you can create that people trying to fight, no, it cannot work, right? In vivo will not work. What of imaginary? Okay, now imagine you are now back to that war place. Now imagine that your leg is about to, oh no, come on. It's not going to still be that effective. What do? We turn to the third technique we call virtual reality. Virtual reality is one of the powerful techniques we're going to be discussing also in this course under these exposure therapies, and use of computer simulated environments to mimic natural settings. So please remember to like and share and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Let me stop it here. Thank you.